President-elect Barack Obama wins Florida en route to making history. In this new political reality, what's the impact and fallout for Florida? That's our topic on Power Play this week with our guest, Steve Bousquet, bureau chief of the St. Petersburg Times, and Joe Folick, New York Times reporter in the capital city. Wow, we've made history, perspective about Obama winning Florida and the presidency.
It's huge. And interestingly enough, for the first time in 3 presidential elections, Florida was not the linchpin this time. Obama had such an overwhelming advantage in these other states like New Mexico and Colorado and elsewhere, North Carolina.
Any surprise by the enormity of the victory and particularly the win here in Florida?
Well, one of the fun things I like to do on election night is look at the county by counties, kind of trickle in, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night. And at 8:30, Duval County was 80% in, and it was a virtual tie between an African-American Barack Obama and a military veteran in Duval County. And then you knew it was over. It was really, really interesting to see.
Same thing happened in Sarasota. Now, you think of Sarasota as being Republican. It really isn't. And he ran very close in Sarasota, too, which is part of the Obama strategy in Florida, which is roll up these big numbers in places like Broward and Dade and hold your own in the areas where the Republicans are stronger.
Was it smart or courageous for Governor Christ to extend the early voting, which won raves from Democrats and some criticism from Republicans? Had to help Obama.
Well, it's classic Charlie Crist. 11 o'clock that morning, he says, I don't think I have any way to do this whatsoever. Ring, ring. Oh, it's Dan Gelber. Oh, okay, Dan. 2 o'clock, he got a press conference saying, let's go ahead and do it. Charlie, very quickly, as he always does, looks at the political calculus of this, sees no real loss, and went ahead and did it, and comes out looking good in the end.
But it plays as the right thing to do before and now, especially after.
Sure. I think Charlie Crist is well positioned going forward because his brand of politics tracks well with Obama's. I mean, even though he's a Republican. The problem Charlie Crist is going to have is the problem he's had since day one with the base of the Republican Party, the conservative base.
But now, Governor Crist looking toward his own re-election in 2 years, Democrats have got to feel pretty good about what he did with this election early voting extension.
Sure, but I think going forward too, Ron, you're going to have a lot of criticism about how the lines were as long as they were. I mean, people were voting at these college campuses at 10:30 on election night, which raises the question about whether we need more early voting sites and longer hours, even longer at early voting sites.
Well, other than the disgraced congressman in District 16, I think it is, who almost gave the seat to the Republican Rooney, were there any surprises in the congressional races in Florida?
The only surprise might have been that one of the projection was that one of those South Florida 3 Republicans was going to lose. Wasn't even close. And I think you saw that in Florida a lot this year. You take out, besides Feeney and besides Keller, who had a lot of baggage, no real surprises in any of these congressional races.
And the Democrats really fielded good candidates in South Florida, but all 3 Hispanic incumbent Republicans easily back in.
Yeah, I mean, the Diaz-Balart brothers deserve congratulations for pulling off those victories with that Obama, strength at the top of the ticket on the other side.
All right, very quickly, no principal change in the composition of the Florida legislature. Still a Republican majority. That's good for a Republican governor, one would think.
They blew it. The Democrats picked up 1 seat in the House, no change in the Senate. These are carefully drawn districts to preserve the power of the party that's in power. The Democrats did it for 100 years, and now the Republicans are doing it. And you didn't see much of a trickle-down effect. And I think there's a lot of recriminations because the Democrats in the House didn't spend their money very well.
And real quickly, Joe, the amendments to Florida's Constitution on the ballot, the voters were picky and choosy about what they said yes and no to.
Well, 60% threshold was supposed to prevent a lot of things from getting passed. Didn't happen this year. Gay marriage amendment makes it with 62. These tax-cutting amendments that we'll see how they pan out, they all pass pretty easily.
Any surprise on the ones that passed or the ones that didn't?
Not really. I think that one thing to look at is that big support for the gay marriage amendment, the marriage protection amendment, has to be attributed to the surge in votes by African Americans and Hispanics, some of whom are socially conservative and like that amendment.
As Florida deals with its own economic problems in the months and perhaps years ahead, have we ever seen a president in our lifetimes take office with the kind of challenges Barack Obama has?
You have to go back to FDR, I think, Ron. That's in your lifetime and not ours.
I think that one of my axioms of life is that it's always good to take over something when it's at the bottom. There's nowhere to go but up for Obama. It's going to be a rocky year or two, but I think in 4 years, when it's re-election time, things have got to look better.
Well, Democrat or Republican, he's everyone's president-elect now. Let's go to your respective power plays of the election cycle.
I'm going to go with Secretary of State Kurt Browning. This guy got blasted unfairly by partisans on both sides. He has the early voting rug pulled out from under him with Charlie Crist said an announcement. He handled it with grace. This is the smoothest election this century in Florida easily.
A good guy and very competent, and it won the day. Steve?
I think it's a no-brainer. It's Steve Shale, the young, smart strategist who ran the Obama campaign in Florida. Go back to last January when Obama was boycotting the state, when it looked like McCain was going to be the strong Republican candidate down here. It didn't look like a sure thing back then. And yet Obama had a thrilling, smashing victory here in Florida. You've got to give some of the credit to Steve Shale.
Okay. Steve Bousquet, Joe Follick, thank you very much. For the latest political news, go to the Safety Review, and we'll see you next time on Power Play.